They were once inseparable, two brothers who used to share everything from their childhood secrets to a single slice of pie, but on the day of their father's memorial, one of them stormed out of the house with tears in his eyes. All because of one crumpled piece of paper. It wasn't part of the official will. It wasn't even meant to be found, but once it was opened, it turned love into betrayal, blood into suspicion, and home into a battlefield. What could possibly be written on that old piece of paper that shattered decades of brotherhood? And what truth did the security camera hidden in their father's bedroom finally reveal? Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to this channel. That way, if you're busy and can't finish the whole story now, you can come back later or explore other unforgettable family dramas just like this one. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The last family dinner they would ever share in peace. The house was quiet, too quiet for a day like this. Outside, the wind rustled the old oak trees, shaking loose a few dry leaves that danced across the gravel driveway. Inside, the smell of roasted ham and fresh cornbread filled the kitchen, but the warmth of the food couldn't hide the coldness in the air. It was the first family gathering since their father passed. A memorial dinner, simple and small, just close family. And yet, the air felt heavier than grief. Ethan stood by the window, his arms crossed tightly across his chest. He was the older brother, always had been the responsible one. The one who showed up early, stayed late, and never forgot a birthday. Kyle, on the other hand, was the charmer, quick to smile, quicker to leave, but Ethan never resented him, not truly. They were brothers, and despite their differences, they'd always had each other's backs. Boys, they built treehouses together, fought over baseball cards, snuck cookies from the kitchen late at night, and blamed it on the cat. Their dad used to joke, if one of you gets in trouble, the other one's probably already there. And that was true, until now today. Kyle was different. He smiled. Sure, but it was strained, twitching at the corners like he was holding something back. He didn't sit next to Ethan at the table like he usually did. He kept glancing at his phone, then at their mother, and then back at the hallway, where their father's old study remained locked. It had been locked since the funeral. No one had gone and no one wanted to. Ethan turned away from the window and walked to the dining room. His mother, Margaret, stood near the head of the table, gently setting out the last of the silverware. She looked older than she did just a month ago. Grief had carved fine lines deeper into her face. He gave her a small smile. She didn't return it. Need help with anything? Ethan asked softly. She shook her head. No, honey. Everything's ready. Kyle appeared behind him, carrying a bottle of their father's favorite scotch. Thought we could use a toast, he said. Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly. Kyle hated scotch. They sat. It wasn't long before the awkward silence settled in. Like dust. The dinner went on. Talk of work. The weather? A few cautious questions about how everyone was doing, but no one mentioned the elephant in the room. The will, the inheritance, the study. Until Margaret cleared her throat and said, "There's something I need to give you both." Ethan and Kyle turned to her at the same time. She reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small brass key. It looked old. Ethan immediately recognized it. It was the key to the study. I wasn't sure when the right time would be, she said, but I think it's today. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Kyle said nothing, but his eyes flickered. Margaret placed the key on the table between them. Then she looked down at her plate and said, "There's a box inside. It belonged to your father. He wanted it kept private. I honored that while he was alive. But now," her voice trailed off. The room was so quiet. You could hear the wind outside again. Ethan looked at Kyle. Kyle looked away. "What's in the box?" Ethan asked. Margaret didn't answer. She simply stood, quietly left the room, and went upstairs without another word. The two brothers sat in silence. The key gleamed softly under the overhead light. Neither reached for it, not yet. Somewhere deep in Ethan's memory, he remembered a time when a key meant adventure. When unlocking a door led to secret clubhouses, dusty old comic books, and giggles. In the dark, but this key, this one felt different. This one felt like the beginning of an unraveling, and neither of them could have imagined just how far the unraveling would go. The study hadn't changed. Dust still clung to the heavy curtains. Stacks of old mail and books sat untouched, like time had simply stopped the moment their father passed. The air inside smelled of old wood, and something else, something colder, like a memory you don't want to remember. Kyle was the first to step inside. He walked slowly, his hand brushing across the edge of their father's worn leather chair. Ethan followed, closing the door softly behind them. They didn't speak for a long while. They simply looked around. Photographs lined the shelves. Their family frozen in time, fishing trips, birthdays, a picture of the two of them in matching Little League uniforms, dirt on their knees, proud smiles on their faces. On the desk sat a small wooden box. Polished, locked. Ethan picked it up, turned it over. The bottom was engraved with their father's initials. He glanced at Kyle. Kyle nodded once. Ethan took a breath and opened it. Inside, there were only 3 things: a silver pocket watch, a folded photograph creased from age, and a single yellowed sheet of paper. He pulled it out slowly. The handwriting was unmistakably their father's. Cursive, neat, slanted slightly to the right. Written in blue ink. Ethan's brow furrowed as he began to read. To my son, if you're reading this, then I am no longer here. You've always been the one with heart, the one who understood the land, the family, and what it means to carry on a name. That is why the ranch, every acre of it should go to you. Ethan stopped. He looked at Kyle. Kyle's face was unreadable. Then, Ethan read the final line. I trust Kyle will understand. He always knew you were the one meant to lead. He folded the letter slowly, carefully, as if any sudden move might make it disappear. Kyle stepped forward. Let me see it. Ethan handed it to him. Kyle read it once, twice, then he sat down in their father's chair without a word. The room felt colder than before, like something sacred had just been broken. Ethan leaned against the bookshelf. I didn't know about this, he said quietly. Kyle didn't look up. His voice, when it came, was low. You think it's real? Ethan blinked. It's his handwriting. That doesn't make it legal, Kyle replied, still staring at the paper. It's not in the will. No, Ethan agreed. It's not. A heavy pause, then Kyle chuckled bitterly. I guess even in death he had a favorite. Ethan looked at him, startled. That's not what this means, isn't it? Kyle snapped, his voice rising. He calls me the one with charm in his eulogy and hands you the land in secret. Ethan stepped forward. We don't even know when this was written. Kyle stood, holding the letter out like it burned his fingers. He didn't trust me. He never did. That's not true. Don't lie to me, Ethan, Kyle shouted. The words echoed off the walls. Dust rose from the floor, shaken by the tension in the air. They stood there, the two of them, surrounded by memories and silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that screamed. Ethan finally said, Let's ask Mom. Kyle hesitated, then nodded tightly. They left the study together, but the closeness they once had didn't follow them out. Back in the dining room, Margaret was washing dishes, her back turned. Ethan spoke first. Mom, there was a letter. In the box? She didn't respond. Kyle added, It says the ranch should go to Ethan. Still nothing, Mom? Ethan pressed. Margaret placed the last dish in the drying rack and turned around. Her eyes were glassy. I know what it says, she whispered. Silence? You knew? Kyle said, voice tight. She nodded. I found it years ago, tucked behind the bookshelf. Your father must have hidden it and forgot. I didn't want to upset anything. I thought it wouldn't matter once the official will was written. Ethan's voice broke. Why didn't you tell us? Margaret looked at them both, her voice shaking. Because it would tear you apart. Kyle turned away, jaw clenched. Ethan stared at the floor, the letter still heavy in his hand. It was already too late. The tearing had begun. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment I found the paper in my head. My brother Jacob didn't say a word. He just stared out the window like the silence could explain everything. But silence only made it worse. The next morning, I decided to visit our Aunt Rose. She was the only family member left who might know something. She greeted me with a tired smile, her hands trembling slightly as she poured tea. I didn't waste time, Aunt Rose. Did Dad ever mention anything strange about Jacob or me? Anything. We didn't know. Her eyes flickered. She looked down into her cup like the answer was written at the bottom. Then, softly, she said, Your father was a good man, but he made mistakes. There were ... secrets, things he never wanted to face. My heart dropped. What kind of secrets? She hesitated. Then, as if a dam had broken, she whispered, Jacob's mother. Wasn't your mother? I froze. What? You and Jacob are not full brothers? He's your half-brother. Your father had an affair just once, but it changed everything. I sat in stunned silence. My whole life I thought Jacob and I shared everything. Our childhood, our pain, our blood. But that wasn't all, Aunt Rose continued. When your mom found out, she forgave him, but only under one condition: he would raise Jacob as if he were hers. And he did. She never treated him any differently. But Jacob, ... he always knew. He knew. Yes, your dad told him the truth when he turned 18. He thought Jacob had the right to know, but he never told you. He wanted to protect you. I left Aunt Rose's house with my head spinning. All the strange moments started to make sense. Jacob's distance, the way he looked at our dad's old photo, like it carried a weight I never understood. And the paper? Was it related to this? When I got home, Jacob was still in the living room, quiet as ever. "I spoke to Aunt Rose," I said. He didn't look surprised. "So, ... You know?" "Yeah, I know you're my half-brother, but why hide the paper?" He stood up slowly. "Because it's not just about blood, it's about what Dad did before he died." He pulled out a small box from behind the bookshelf and handed it to me. "Open it." Inside was another letter. This one, from our father, dated just a week before he passed. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It read, "To my sons, if you're reading this, I've already left this world. There are things I never had the courage to say. I failed you both in different ways. I lied, I kept secrets, but I never stopped loving you. Jacob. I gave you the truth too late. And to you, my youngest, I gave you peace built on a lie. This is my confession. But it's also my plea, don't let my past destroy your bond. You were raised as brothers. You are brothers. That is what matters." I couldn't hold back the tears. It was like hearing his voice again. But this time he sounded broken. I looked at Jacob, and for the first time in a long time I saw the pain in his eyes, not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as my brother. But even as my heart softened, one question burned inside me. If he wanted us to stay close, why did he write a will that divides us? Jacob sighed. "Because there's more. And it's not just about us." I didn't know what that meant yet, but I could feel it. This was only the beginning. The past wasn't done with us. Not even close. Ethan sat in his truck outside the house for what felt like hours, staring blankly through the windshield. He hadn't spoken to Jacob since the letter surfaced. His heart was caught in a storm of grief, confusion, and rage. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the handwriting, his mother's handwriting. Her words telling another story. One that painted Jacob, not as his brother but as a stranger who didn't belong. Inside, Jacob was pacing, unable to sit still. He had read the letter, over and over. The words didn't change, but the pain seemed to grow with each reading. Finally, the front door creaked open. Ethan stepped inside, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. Their father was nowhere in sight. Jacob turned, eyes red. "You finally came," he said quietly. Ethan didn't answer. He walked to the kitchen table and slapped the letter down. "Tell me it's a lie," he said, voice cold and cracking. Jacob looked down. "I don't know. I didn't know. I swear." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "You lived here your whole life. You knew something, Jacob. You had to. I didn't. I always wondered why he treated me different, but I just thought he was strict. I didn't know he wasn't my real dad." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're not even my brother." Those words hit Jacob like a brick. He staggered back a step, hand gripping the back of a chair to steady himself. "I am your brother?" he said through trembling lips. "Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters." "No," Ethan cut in. "Every memory we shared, every laugh, every fight. We lived a lie." Jacob's voice cracked. "We lived the same life. I was there when you broke your arm. In 7th grade, I helped you bury Duke in the backyard. You called me your best man because I didn't know." Ethan shouted. There was a long silence, the kind that made the walls seem to close in. Finally, Jacob whispered, "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wouldn't trade everything just to go back and never find that letter?" Ethan turned away, hands on his head, breathing heavily. "You still should have told me the moment you read it. Instead, you waited. Let me live in the dark like a fool." "I was trying to protect you," Jacob said. "Protect me?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "From what? The truth? Or from the shame of being someone else's mistake?" The words hung in the air, cruel and raw. Jacob's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't wipe them away. "You're not the only one hurting, Ethan," he said softly. "I lost the only father I ever knew. And now I'm losing my brother, too." There was a long silence. Outside, the wind picked up, and the old swing on the porch groaned like it had something to say, but neither of them moved. They just stood there, two grown men, broken in a way that neither bruises nor time could easily heal. "Then," Ethan said quietly, almost to himself, "all because of one piece of paper." Jacob nodded. One piece of paper, and a lifetime of silence. They stood in separate corners of the room, not just physically, but emotionally, worlds apart. The silence between them wasn't peaceful anymore. It was sharp, heavy, and neither of them knew how to break it without breaking something else. Part 5. The truth begins to twist. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at the document again. The handwriting was unmistakably their father's, but the content, it didn't match the man they had both loved. "This doesn't make sense," Daniel whispered to himself. "Dad would never." He didn't finish the sentence. He couldn't. Across town, Nathan was pacing in his garage, holding a yellowed envelope that had fallen from one of his father's old toolboxes. Inside were 2 letters, one addressed to Nathan, the other to someone named Judith. Judith. He had never heard the name before. Curiosity burned through him, but fear pulled at his chest. What if this Judith had something to do with the document Daniel had found? What if there was more to their father's past than either of them had ever imagined? He opened the letter addressed to Judith. My dearest Judith, I've hidden the truth for too long. The boys can never know. Not until I'm gone. Nathan froze. The words blurred as his eyes filled with tears. What truth? And why couldn't they know? He felt sick. Just then, Daniel called. Did you find anything weird in Dad's stuff? Nathan hesitated, then lied. No, just old tools, right? Same here. A silence stretched between them, deeper than ever before. For the first time in their lives, they were keeping secrets from each other. Later that night, Daniel pulled out a box of photographs. As he flipped through them, he noticed something odd. In every family photo there was a shadow, a woman in the background, the same face, again and again, never quite looking at the camera. Always nearby, always watching. He zoomed in on one picture, his hands trembling. It was the same woman from the photo in the envelope Nathan had found. Judith, but why was she always there? And why had no one ever talked about her? Nathan, unable to sleep, sat at his computer and searched through public archives. He typed in her full name, Judith Lorraine Matthews. The result popped up in seconds. Deceased, the obituary was dated only 3 months before their father's passing. Nathan's stomach dropped. Beloved mother of 2 sons. He clicked the full obituary and there it was. Survived by Daniel and Nathan Matthews. What? What? His hands shook as he reread it again and again. Daniel and Nathan, the woman from the shadows, was their real mother. No, this had to be a mistake. But then another twist hit him harder than the last. The woman who raised them, the one they had called Mom all their lives, was never legally married to their father. She had raised them with love, but she wasn't their mother, and their real mother. She had been alive, watching from afar. For decades, Nathan felt like the floor had vanished beneath his feet. Meanwhile, Daniel was looking through an old family Bible and found a page with a strange passage underlined. A sticky note next to it read, "Forgiveness is hardest when truth wears the face of betrayal." Daniel's heart pounded. He could no longer trust what he believed. Not even his memories felt safe anymore. The truth was no longer a straight line. It was a maze, constantly shifting, constantly tricking them. Even now, the voice in his head whispered, "What else don't you know?" Sometimes life doesn't hand you the truth. It hands you pieces and lets you bleed while trying to fit them together. If you're still following this journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss how it all unravels. Or if you need time to reflect, you can always come back later. The story will be here waiting. But for now, Nathan drove to Daniel's house. He had to tell him everything. But as he stood at the door, fist raised to knock, he paused. What if telling the truth now made things even worse? What if Daniel never forgave him? He turned, walking back toward his car. Behind the curtain, Daniel had been watching the whole time. And just like that, the silence between them grew louder than ever. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at the document again. The handwriting was unmistakably their father's, but the content, it didn't match the man they had both loved. This doesn't make sense, Daniel whispered to himself. Dad would never. He didn't finish the sentence. He couldn't. Across town, Nathan was pacing in his garage, holding a yellowed envelope that had fallen from one of his father's old toolboxes. Inside were 2 letters, one addressed to Nathan, the other to someone named Judith. Judith. He had never heard the name before. Curiosity burned through him, but fear pulled at his chest. What if this Judith had something to do with the document Daniel had found? What if there was more to their father's past than either of them had ever imagined? He opened the letter addressed to Judith. My dearest Judith, I've hidden the truth. For too long, the boys can never know. Not until I'm gone. Nathan froze. The words blurred as his eyes filled with tears. What truth? And why couldn't they know? He felt sick just then. Daniel called. Did you find anything weird in Dad's stuff? Nathan hesitated, then lied. No, just old tools, right? Same here. A silence stretched between them, deeper than ever before. For the first time in their lives, they were keeping secrets from each other. Later that night, Daniel pulled out a box of photographs. As he flipped through them, he noticed something odd. In every family photo, there was a shadow, a woman in the background. The same face again and again, never quite looking at the camera. Always nearby, always watching. He zoomed in on one picture, his hands trembling. It was the same woman from the photo in the envelope Nathan had found. Judith, but why was she always there? And why had no one ever talked about her? Nathan, unable to sleep, sat at his computer and searched through public archives. He typed in her full name, Judith Lorraine Matthews. The result popped up in seconds. Deceased. The obituary was dated only 3 months before their father's passing. Nathan's stomach dropped. Beloved mother of 2 sons. He clicked the full obituary, and there it was, survived by Daniel and Nathan Matthews. What? What? His hands shook as he reread it again and again. Daniel and Nathan, the woman from the shadows, was their real mother. No, this had to be a mistake. But then another twist hit him harder than the last. The woman who raised them, the one they had called mom all their lives, was never legally married to their father. She had raised them with love, but she wasn't their mother, and their real mother she had been alive, watching from afar. For decades, Nathan felt like the floor had vanished beneath his feet. Meanwhile, Daniel was looking through an old family Bible and found a page with a strange passage underlined. A sticky note next to it read, "Forgiveness is hardest when truth wears the face of betrayal." Daniel's heart pounded. He could no longer trust what he believed. Not even his memories felt safe anymore. The truth was no longer a straight line, it was a maze, constantly shifting, constantly tricking them. Even now, the voice in his head whispered, "What else don't you know? Sometimes life doesn't hand you the truth. It hands you pieces and lets you bleed while trying to fit them together." If you're still following this journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss how it all unravels. Or if you need time to reflect, you can always come back later. The story will be here waiting, but for now, Nathan drove to Daniel's house. He had to tell him everything, but as he stood at the door, fist raised to knock, he paused. What if telling the truth now made things even worse? What if Daniel never forgave him? He turned, walking back toward his car. Behind the curtain, Daniel had been watching the whole time, and just like that, the silence between them grew louder than ever. A month had passed since the letter had torn the family apart. The silence between Michael and Daniel had turned to icy distance, but underneath that cold surface, something darker was brewing. One afternoon, Michael drove 2 hours to visit a retired lawyer and old friend of their late father. He brought the letter with him, hoping to find some clarity. The lawyer, Mr. Jennings, squinted at the paper, ran his fingers over the signature, and frowned. "This isn't your father's handwriting," he said bluntly. Michael's heart stopped. "What do you mean? I worked with your father for 20 years. This is a poor imitation. And this part here," he pointed at the date he was in the hospital that week. "There's no way he could have signed this. A forgery." The document that had shattered their family was fake. Michael felt sick. But then, something else started to rise in his chest. Anger. Who would do this and why? He left Mr. Jennings' house with his hands trembling. On the drive home, Michael started connecting the dots. Daniel had found the letter. Daniel had insisted it was real. Daniel had everything to gain from it. But would his own brother go that far? That night, Michael called his aunt, his father's only surviving sister. She was hesitant, but when he told her about the forged document, she gasped. "There's something you should know," she whispered. "After your mom passed away, your father updated the will. He left everything to you both equally. I saw it myself." Michael's voice cracked. "So, where's that will now?" "I don't know," she said, "but I remember. He kept it in the old blue folder in his study." Michael hung up and rushed to their childhood home. He hadn't been back since the fallout. The study was dusty, frozen in time. He rummaged through drawers, file cabinets, until finally, he found it. A blue folder, faded, but intact. Inside, an official copy of the will, signed, notarized, dated months after the supposed letter. And it said exactly what his aunt had told him. Equal inheritance. No secret child. No shocking confession. Tears filled his eyes. He had hated his brother. Based on a lie, as he clutched the folder, the front door creaked open. It was Daniel. They stood frozen, staring at each other. Michael stepped forward and held out the will. "You lied to me?" he said softly. Daniel's face went pale, then flushed. "I didn't forge it," he snapped. "I found it in Dad's safe. But this." Michael held up the fake letter. "It's not real, and you knew it." Daniel looked away. Silence. Finally, he whispered, "I was scared, Mike. I thought Dad left everything to you. I wanted my peace. I didn't think it would explode like this." Michael could barely breathe. "You turned me against Dad, against you. All for a lie." Daniel stepped forward. "I'm sorry." But Michael wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. He walked past his brother without another word. Outside, he stood in the quiet night. He looked up at the stars, remembering his father's voice. "No matter what happens, always protect your brother." He had failed that promise, but maybe it wasn't too late to fix things. Just when it felt like all hope was lost, a name from the past walked through the front door. It was Walter. Dad's oldest friend from high school, someone neither of us had seen in years. He looked older, slower, but his eyes were sharp. He carried a thick, sealed envelope. "Your father told me to give this to you both. If things ever went sideways," Walter said quietly, placing the envelope on the coffee table. Michael and I exchanged stunned glances. I could feel my pulse quicken. Walter sat down, his hands trembling slightly as he opened the envelope. Inside was a second will, one with a notarized signature and a recent date. Far more recent than the one Michael had been waving around like a sword. "I was there when your father signed this," Walter said. He knew conflict might arise, so he made sure to leave a clean trail. Michael's face drained of color. The new will was different. Dad had split everything equally between us. The house, the land, the antiques, even his beloved watch collection. He had also included a heartfelt letter addressed to both of us. In it, he wrote, "I know the pain of losing a father. I do not want that pain to be the reason you lose each other. Whatever mistakes I made as a parent, I hope this final act will bring peace, not bitterness." Michael stood up abruptly. This doesn't make sense. Why would he change it?" Walter looked at him calmly, because he realized no material thing was worth watching his sons fall apart. It was a gut punch. Michael stormed out of the room, slamming the door. I didn't follow. I needed to sit with it, digest it. The letter, Dad's handwriting, the quiet dignity in his words. It broke me in a different way than his death did. I whispered to the empty room, "Why didn't you tell me, Dad?" As I sat there, Walter gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "He loved you both, fiercely, but he knew Michael always struggled with feeling second best. That's why he gave you the letter, and gave me the wilt, to make sure it came from a neutral hand." There it was. The twist we never saw coming. Dad wasn't playing favorites. He was trying to save us from ourselves, but sometimes, even the truth doesn't undo the damage lies have done. I found Michael sitting alone on the porch swing the next morning, the same one Dad used to sit on, every Sunday reading the paper, humming old country tunes. He looked like a shadow of himself. "You read the letter?" I asked. Standing by the railing, he didn't answer right away, just nodded slowly. "I wanted more, always did," he said finally. "But I didn't expect to become someone who'd forge our father's will." I sat beside him. For a long time, we just listened to the wind rustling through the trees. Then he whispered, "You should hate me." I did, I admitted, for a minute. That made him look at me. But then I realized, I continued, "You didn't need more money, you needed more love. More proof that Dad cared about you just as much." Michael wiped his face roughly, like he could scrub off the shame. "I ruined everything." "No," I said gently, "but you almost did." He handed me something wrapped in an old cloth. I unwrapped it slowly. Dad's favorite pocket watch, the one he used to check every time we were late for dinner. "It's yours," Michael said. "He wanted us to have it. But you should be the one to keep time now." Just then, Walter joined us, holding a manila folder. He looked grim. "I didn't want to say this yesterday," he began, "but I think you both deserve the whole truth now." Michael tensed beside me. Walter opened the folder. Inside were photographs, legal documents, a DNA test. "Before your father passed," Walter said slowly, "he discovered something that shook him deeply." My heart dropped. Walter looked directly at Michael. "You're not his biological son." Silence. Michael didn't move, didn't blink. Walter continued, "Your mother had an affair. He only found out recently. But instead of disowning you, he rewrote his will to make sure you wouldn't feel like less of a son." Michael finally spoke, voice shaking. "He knew ... and he still loved you like his own," Walter said firmly. "Every single day." It was the final twist in a story already bursting at the seams with betrayal and forgiveness. Michael collapsed into tears. And for the first time in years, I pulled my brother into an embrace. Not as rivals, not as enemies, but as two broken men, holding on to the one thing we still had. Each other. We buried Dad the next day. Together, no lawyers, no bitterness. Just the two of us side by side, lowering him into the ground as he deserved. After the service, I placed the pocket watch on his casket. Time had taken him, but it also gave us something back. A second chance. Us. Even the deepest wounds can heal if we dare to face the truth. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? A single piece of paper turned blood into bitterness. And what hurts the most wasn't the money, wasn't the inheritance. It was the silence, the suspicion, the shattered trust that took years to build. Sometimes, the truth doesn't tear a family apart, it's the lies built around it. We all think we know our loved ones, until a secret comes crawling out from the past. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that changed how you see your own family? I'd love to hear your story in the comments, because sometimes Healing begins when we share. And if this story made you feel something, a chill, a lump in your throat, a tear you didn't expect, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Not just to catch more true-to-bone stories like this one, but to stay close to the kind of stories that remind us we're not alone in this life. Maybe the next video will be the one that makes you say, "That's my story too." Thank you for watching, and remember, some truths come late, but they always come.